had this thing for a long time and didn't use it for the purpose.
I got mine, snow, like 4 or 5 years ago, we had the 16-inch snow, and then we had like the 8 or 10-inch snow, like a week or so later. And the snow blow, I ordered it after the first snow, and it got to Kansas City in the middle of it. And then we got the second snow, and it was sitting at Yellow Freight's warehouse over there for 3 days. By the time we got it, when it delivered, I only had about that much snow in it. So I went in and fired it up anyway.
Another one I got, I did 1976.
Really?
Still got the original tires on it.
Wow.
Now, I noticed they're getting pretty weather checked even though it's inside.
Yeah. Yeah, I think online probably, depending upon how yours. Don't have to use it again this year, probably after next year, the little rubber thing that goes around, you raise it lower. So I'll probably have to replace it.
Do you guys have a dry water, or does your contractor have enough room?
Well,
Had a pretty busy couple night out there tonight.
oh, we just decided to stay home and,
That place is packed.
was it?
Their owner is, house builder.
It's no walls out there.
Really?
Yeah. I said, what are you doing in here? He said, well, come out, we decided to have tacos. Him and little Walter and Monica.
Oh.
I said, it's just not the same though. Spraying tacos doesn't sound near as good as beer tacos. Incredibly bad places.
Shit, this thing must be on the safe side.
Long time no see.
Yeah, we could wish
How's it going?
Good, everything.
Pretty good.
See no trouble?
Yeah, I try.
I do too.
You trying to stay in trouble or out?
No, I try to stay out of trouble.
Mike, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Justin?
Mike, you play anything last weekend?
Yeah, we did. We played Sunday evening. We did. You missed it. Good old show.
It was great.
The replay down there in Lawrence.
We played replay?
Yeah. How about you? You're in a band, aren't you? You play bass, don't you?
You ought to get on down at Knuckleheads for a weekend.
Actually,
Yeah.
I played with my
It's hopping usually. Yeah.
You want to do it on a weekend.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah, it was
We mask free?
Sunday.
We are mask optional.
Wow.
Sir. Yes.
What do you play, Mike?
Drums.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many people in your band?
I thought it worked tonight.
Varies. Between 4 and 6 or 7, depending on the shows.
What do you play?
It's actually old country.
Not much.
Yeah.
That's a good thing, isn't it?
It's mostly country.
Yeah.
Hank Williams. All that older stuff.
Yeah, we played some country, or play a little bit of
You know, still got.
Oh yeah.
classic rock.
Yeah.
You know, I missed the whole thing.
Yeah,
We
no.
left on Wednesday
Like
night.
their
Hardest thing.
Flew in on Monday yesterday.
That's the,
There wasn't any snow from
finding
here.
singers is the.
Oh yeah.
Where'd you
Just
go
the
with
whole-
Yeah.
that?
Well, you know in the country, so, I mean,
There's a
maybe
big
in
softball
Lawrence,
tournament down
the
there.
singers aren't
College teams.
Uh-huh.
for the country stuff.
My daughter and I always
Seems like
talk
there's
about
plenty
going
of
through it.
Really?
Yeah.
She and my son both
So
live in New
I
York,
mean,
so.
you kind of,
Why don't you go down and we'll go to the
rotate
tournament,
through people, so.
hang out at the beach.
Yeah,
Did you used to play softball?
a little bit.
Yeah, our band is,
Yeah.
4 guys, we're all
So, but you know,
friends,
most
so
of
it's
the people
like,
she knows are gone.
Yeah.
we kinda gotta tread lightly a little.
But one of the
approaches.
coaches she used to play for was Coach Clemson.
You gotta
So,
pick songs that the lead singer.
But
Oh,
it's,
can do, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so it's,
yeah.
it's,
It was a good song.
you know, I wanna be.
And there were literally 2,000 people there.
It's amazing how many girls
Oh yeah.
pitch
I
that
didn't wanna
ball.
sing it, so.
Yeah, it was fun.
Hi, guys.
There you
Okay, I
go.
was gonna sing it.
Hey, guys.
There you go.
You can start playing about it, but you're not gonna sing it.
Yeah.
You're kind of stuck.
Yeah, I mean, singer wants to really want to know
I didn't know
the words.
No, I thought that was a great comment.
And I don't wanna learn to sing, so.
Yeah, I missed the whole thing. You guys were like, so what's now?
I've conceded in my life that I don't want to be a singer, so, you gotta draw the line
I'm
somewhere.
with you. It's not that I don't want to be, I just cannot.
Yeah.
I mean, my voice is no good at all, and I have trouble like singing and playing at the same time. It's difficult.
Drumming, I can see that.
There's one song where I sort of rap, so I can do that. When I practice enough, I can do that. You know, it's like a 4-bar little rap thing. That's all I can do.
They've been taking the first one.
See if that microphone works any better.
Well, it works better than this one with dead batteries.
Definitely helps if we have good batteries.
Yeah. Yeah.
Get it in case I get sidetracked, I've got to set my tips.
No, that is that.
I don't forget that.
Yeah, that's the alarm.
I don't forget
No, that's true. That is true.
This conference will now be recorded.
That's your warning.
Mayday, mayday.
Yeah, right.
I'm telling them I started time flies. Not going well. Sorry, my phone.
50 seconds. So we'll see if they plan for the printer.
Are you ready, Mike?
Yes, ready. Thanks.
I'd like to welcome everyone to the February 22nd Planning and Zoning meeting. Roll call.
Manson.
Present.
Garrett.
Present.
Templin.
Here.
Lane.
Here.
Fisher.
Here.
Schultz.
Here.
Milburn.
Here.
All are present.
Thank you. Item 3 under general business. Approved Planning Commission agenda.
Make a motion, we approve the planning commission agenda.
We have a motion.
I second.
Do we have a second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Approved. Item B, approved minutes of the Planning Commission meeting held on January the 25th, 2022.
Make a motion, we approve the minutes from planning commission meeting held on January 25th, 2022.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Minutes approved. Item C, disclosure of conflict of interest. Do we have any?
None.
Seeing none. Disclosure of outside communications regarding commission business. None. Seeing none. Item 4, call to the public. Members of the public who wish to address the planning commission regarding items not on the agenda may do so at this time. Any presentations for information purposes only, and no action will be taken, and there's a 4-minute time limit. Do we have anybody? Seeing none, close the call to public. Item 5, public hearing. Item A, consider text amendment for architectural standards. Brad?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a continuation on our discussion about updating our architectural regulations in the DeSoto City Code, primarily emphasizing the M1 and M2 districts. This all really started because of the built-up wall construction.
It's all good.
Okay, keep going.
Have a short time out here.
Can't take you guys out in public.
Yeah. Can't take me anywhere.
Away from the electronics,
I
that's
know.
good.
Sorry, Brad.
All right, are we good?
All right, Brad.
All right. As I was saying, one of our biggest issues is our code doesn't allow for tilt-up concrete building construction. So that's something that does need to be addressed. There's also, at our previous meeting, I presented information from Olathe standards, Edgerton standards. There's also discussion from Commissioner Templin about wanting to look at my Nexus standards as well. So I did go through, spent a lot of time looking at, focusing primarily on Olathe and my Nexus standards, seeing what they had. In their current situation, now they do a lot of planned unit development. We don't do that at all. So all their new construction, especially for these large tilt-up buildings, are planned unit development where they get down into a lot of nitty-gritty things that really we're not set up for as our staff time. And additionally, we would have to revise entirely our entire city code in many ways to come up with something along those lines. So then there was what Flint Development had proposed, and actually spent a lot of time looking at those as well, comparing to our standards, comparing language to Lenexa and Olathe standards, and found out there really was a lot of commonality. It's presented in the ones that we call Olathe. It was primarily in a table format. Lenexa's was just primarily in a written format, very long. They've got different tree zones, counting the caliper of the size of existing trees, counting points and all sorts of things that I think are pretty incredible actually, but that's the way they go about their business. And so I know that, and when I look at these communities, it's not that I'm trying to model us after it's really just establish baseline information and educate myself and make sure I feel like I'm educated enough to talk about those standards and how their processes work. So with that, we also had a suggestion by Flint Development, which I included in your staff report as well. I spent a lot of time looking at those suggestions as well. I guess what really struck me about it is they didn't take anything out of our code. I just added sections primarily towards the M1 and M2 districts, so things that we had prior. They're not revamping the code, they're not gutting the code, but they did add some suggestions for really adding some more subjective standards. Because like I said, we've got some things in there that say they must this, they must that, set percentages. And I've also spent a lot of time looking at a lot of these industrial buildings in the last couple of 3 weeks, see what works better where. You can actually start to see style changes, getting away from metal buildings, just outside guttering, some air conditioning units on the top, metal parapets, and transitioning, and then of course the tilt of concrete construction. It's really allowed for the large box retail, large box distribution buildings to come into play, just the way they're made. The panels are built off-site, they're hauled around a truck, they're tilted up, they're bolted together, put some trusses on, a roof, and away they go. So it's really efficient. It's a quick way of doing things. And it's really a response, as we all know, to inflation, construction costs, and all those type of things. So tilt-up construction industry or tilt-up construction method is going to be where we're at. Large metal buildings just they're not making them like that anymore. It takes too much time. Steel is kind of premium, you just can't get it very quickly. Concrete is something that is durable and it holds up well. So with that, I did want to quickly address the lighting. I think Roger, you brought up the lighting. It's something that you were concerned about when I looked at our lighting standards. There's been no suggestion that our lighting standards are inadequate. We would still require a photometric plan, make sure the light doesn't spill off the buildings, and the fixtures, light primarily stays on the building facade, the exterior, doesn't spill off the site. So I did want to include that in the staff report as to what we require. I'm not suggesting that we get into the lighting standards at this time. One thing that, of course, we talked about the Flint suggestion areas, they're focusing primarily on the M1, M2 district, which is, of course, what we've recently approved, or the council approved as a rezoning district. And also when we get into the Sunflower area, there'll be a lot of M1, there'll be a lot of M2 coming through those areas as well. So we need to be ready for that type construction and approvals for site planning, site development as we move forward on those 6,000 acres that the city recently annexed and develops over time. I think one of the first things was item G that I'd like to talk a little bit about. It says the proportion of the building shall be consistent, compatible scale, form, proportion of the immediate area for future development of the comprehensive plan. I guess at the end of the day, that's kind of where a future management plan is for, is to say what's there now. Because obviously, if you were going to not have that line on there, everything would have to be constructed almost like a single-family home or a barn, which are those types of things out there. So I think that's a pretty reasonable comment to add to the architectural standards that we have. The loading docks. Now, this is something that I looked at quite a bit. Loading docks for the M1 and M2 districts, when you see them along residentially zoned areas, that's sort of the bigger key. When you have a development inside the development or at the rear, you're really not affecting any residential person. You're not affecting somebody who's not there all the time. I mean, they're just people that have been working, they're doing their job. They're loading and unloading trucks, they're coming and going. So I think there does need to be some consideration for the loading docks that are facing residential districts. And as you know, along Richardson Road is that corridor that we're talking about that faces a residential district. So there is the provision for additional landscaping. We've got all these things that are good, but this does give the planning commission some leeway to increase setbacks. It does give the planning commission some leeway to increase landscaping trees, berms, all those types of things, even fencing if you so desire. So it does give that latitude, and it doesn't require a specific number of trees. Again, I think it does give some more opportunity to comment on something that isn't taken out of your hand. Let's say you only put in 20 trees, and that's it. So that's one of the things that I do kind of like about what they proposed is it doesn't require a certain amount. You say you need 40 trees, then it's 40 trees. So we can move on and help screen and help those views from being this. We can scale them back. We can soften them as much as possible. We're not going to make those buildings disappear by any stretch of the imagination, but we can do a lot of increasing the setbacks, buffering, all those types of things that are part of, in many ways are part of our code now, but this does give you some additional latitude to increase those setbacks. Also, the building facades that are greater than 100 feet shall incorporate recesses, projections. Now, these are their words we put in there. And so we've added that potentially incorporating that language. That does give you that leeway where we have to see those things, or actually we're not even going to bring it to the planning commission. The process that we go through when a site plan is submitted, I review it, I look at our code, make sure the building detail matches up with all of our items that are in the code. Mike will review it, provide his comments, and there's usually some back and forth. I mean, the O'Reilly building, I remember that, we had some discussion on that back wall, if you recall, where it comes up to the drive that goes up to Harts. It's just a big wall. So we made them put more landscaping in, do some more things. So they had to additionally.
Well, is this microphone on?
Yeah, it's on.
Yeah, Brad, can you
I'll just
speak directly and loudly? Continue to speak direct and loud?
All right, I will do my best.
That's not loud enough. Louder?
Loud, loud, loud.
There we
Okay.
go.
So anyway, the O'Reillys, we went back and forth with, and like these exchanges are not contiguous, but it's just like, hey, we've got this big split-face block wall. We think and it's close to the property line, even though it does meet our setbacks. We need to have some additional plantings here. We need to make sure that there's a mulch bed and there's some treatments to that along those edges. And those are the types of things. Now, we haven't had to deal with a 20-acre building or anything like that, but those are the types of discussions that happen between city staff and the developer when those items are proposed. And that's really what we'd be doing now. So, like I said at the previous meeting, we're sort of your first line of defense. We don't want to give you something that isn't reasonable at all, that you wouldn't even consider. So a lot of things you wouldn't get to the point where we would bring them to you without going through all the things that we have in our code and making sure that you feel that they're adequate and it's something that ultimately the planning commission can approve. Except the item with the concrete wall panels is pretty straightforward with the acrylic coating. It's something that's not addressed in our city code. I think it's pretty necessary that needs to be in there as well. And the other thing that was beneficial is that they suggested other high-quality materials approved by staff. You recall Jake's Fireworks has that facade in the front of that. That's actually not specifically listed in our code. But the research we did found that it's used quite a bit in areas. Some of those museums by the Leawood Town Center Mall, they have those big banners. It's the same type of material that Jake's Fireworks used. So we felt that was an appropriate architectural treatment and brought that forward to the planning commission. As I recall, we had some discussion about whether it should be a metal front or would we allow that it's a fabric type front. So those are the types of things that still give us some leeway to say, can we try this? Can we suggest this as well? So that really covers, I think, the essence of what Flint Development has proposed, and I don't think any of those standards are unreasonable. I did go ahead and look at, as I told you about the Lenexa and Olathe's standards, and came up with a few things I do think needs to be in there. Common entry must be defined with projection from the facade or recessed area. We want to make sure those sort of corners are bookend. They need to have some sort of vertical articulation. That's used a lot, something that stands out from the building that gives it some interest. I'm going to skip, I want to come back to the percentage of the glass. The building should include, and I kind of talked about this, that the corners are anchored somewhat, so you don't just focus on this big wall of structure. You've got a beginning and an end. You can see where, and all the features that are in between. And we've already got things in there about recessed areas within the 100-foot stretches of a building. And then, actually, when we talked a little bit about the adjoining residential zoning districts must be set back 200 feet at a minimum. Our code, as I recall, is 35 feet from the edge of the property line. So if there's a residential area on the other side of the street, it needs to be set back 200 feet, which will include landscaping and designated open space or other items that staff or the planning commission might think are reasonable. One thing that did sort of come up with looking into this, and actually I did talk with all from this representing, is the 15% minimum glass requirement. Now that did come directly from a LAFIS standard, that amount, 15% on primary facade areas. And the problem with that is, upon reflection, and then looking at the building, when those tilt-up panels are made, when you make those panels, you have to account for where that window is going. It's time, it's effort, it's money. Now, that's not really what we're so concerned about. Yeah, we might efficiency and all those types of things as well, but I think what I would like to probably put in there is something that's more along that 15% glass is incorporated at corner entries or main entrances, or things along those areas that they're trying to make their architectural statement. But I don't need them to be able to make an architectural statement